So we are live because, Mikhail, you and I have been discussing the possibility of Putin's reaction if America went into Venezuela. I was more skeptical that they would actually go in than you were, but here we are. And so I wanted to talk to you as soon as possible about what this means more globally. And I was interested, I just read Tom Friedman has written in the New York Times, and he wrote something that I'm not sure you'll agree with. He wrote that he thinks Putin might be pleased that this has happened because it will, particularly if Trump is serious about running Venezuela in the interim, it will keep Trump preoccupied and away from Russia, Ukraine. I don't think I think you have a different take. Am I wrong?
I'm not. Definitely, Putin is not pleased. And I don't think that Putin. I don't think that Trump is preoccupied with Ukraine and Russia. We've been witnessing this invitation of negotiations for the year, and I think that we'll see this for a longer period of time. So I don't think that what is happening in Venezuela will definitely make Trump forget about the rest of the world.
No, and he mentioned, he was asked about Putin. I'm sure you saw it in the press conference. Yeah, and he's obviously feeling very confident, and he said, "Yeah, I'm not pleased with Putin."
Let's just start from what we were expecting, because during the last, I would say, few months, I was hearing some signals from my sources in Moscow, some speculations about expectations about the upcoming military operation in Venezuela, and they were pretty sure. They were kind of nervous about that, because that for them that was some new development they were afraid of, because that is not connected closely, and it seems that it's not connected to the situation in Ukraine and Russia, but at the same time it is. And in the current situation of Russian economy, that could be a really bad news for Russia, because for Putin, his oil reserves is probably the most important factor of some kind of stability, because he is we agree, we both agree that he's not interested in having real long-term or even short-term peace with Ukraine.
Yeah.
That means that he's going to continue the war, and he needs to pretend that he's having some negotiations with Donald Trump, and he needs to avoid new sanctions, or at least to make these sanctions minimal, because he believes that sanctions won't work. He believes that no matter what happens, his ability to sell oil and gas, primarily oil, is still there. It cannot be. He cannot be deprived of his oil reserves and oil money. And the operation in Venezuela is a bad news for him, because that would potentially change the situation in the oil market. It's not that easy. It doesn't mean that tomorrow the oil prices would collapse. But that definitely changes the situation psychologically, because for many years, psychologically, Venezuela was Russian asset. For many years, Russia was sponsoring regime in Caracas. Russia was supporting Venezuela with its weapons, and Russia was a partner of the Venezuelan government. So yes, it will change the situation psychologically.
Yes.
And it's very important. So they what we see right now for Russian oil and gas is it's still stable. it's not really good because the price they have to sell Russian government, Russian um, well, companies have to sell their oil with a huge discount. So the latest contract with India was slightly more than 22 dollars per barrel, which is almost 3 times less than the average world price. So
Right.
yes, so Russia needs to sell its oil, and with Venezuela missing from that
Yes.
access of allies is going to be harder and harder, and definitely that's that won't change Putin's perception. It doesn't mean that now he will change his position on Ukraine. Now he's going to be more loyal or more thoughtful or more scared. No, he's going to continue his war, but that's definitely a bad news for Putin.
So, have you heard anything from your contacts about? So, the vice president of Venezuela was very recently in Russia, right? I mean, there were even Delcy Rodriguez. There were even reports, I think, this morning. I mean, they were wrong, as it turned out, that she
Hmm.
was
Hmm.
still in Moscow. Do you have any idea what she was doing there, what that was about?
Actually, I didn't have any details about that visit. And what I've heard, there is much more important visit that happened just a few days ago. Maybe that high-ranking Chinese delegation that visited Caracas just a few days ago, and they still might be there. So
Yes.
so that operation happened just with a high-ranking Chinese official in Caracas, which is much more serious, I guess. Um, yeah, we heard that rumors that she might have fled to Russia. That's not true. We have heard that Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov talked uh, to Venezuelan Foreign Minister and to Foreign Minister of Belarus, which is a hilarious detail. Probably Belarus is the next in line, or um, the next
Right.
element of that axis. Um, but what's important, the wording of the Russian regime was not that harsh as we could have expected. So from the beginning, early morning, after it happened, like morning in America, it was afternoon in Moscow. But the first reaction from Russian Foreign Ministry was um, as aggressive as it usually could be. It was so the Russian Foreign Ministry denounced this act of aggression, and then nothing happened. In the evening news on Russian state-owned television, that statement of Russian Foreign Ministry wasn't even mentioned. Somehow Russian propaganda kind of backed off, and Russian propaganda, it's clear that they are not happy with that, but they are not trying to repeat the first statement of Russian Foreign Ministry. There was no reaction from President Putin. Um, it's very interesting. I'm monitoring everything the most prominent figures of Russian propaganda are saying, and usually they are very quick in their
Mm.
response. They're very rude. They are cursing, swearing. It's pathetic and hilarious at the same time to watch how they react. And you can always it's always interesting how they keep silence and they don't know how to react when something serious happens. I remember that, for example, back 3 years ago, when there was Yevgeny Prigozhin's uprising in Russia, Russian propaganda and Russian main propagandists, Russian warmongers could not decide how to react because they didn't have any instructions. And I mean politicians and bloggers. they do the same. We haven't heard any reaction from President Putin. His mouthpiece, his like Putin's Trump, the person who is active on social media, on X, who's got his Telegram channel, former President Dmitry Medvedev, who is famous for his strong
Wait,
strong words. He's silent. Margarita Simonyan, the head of RT, who is the queen of Russian propaganda, she is silent. There is no response from Moscow, and it reminds me of another situation. You probably remember. I usually I remember it every time when we speculate about the perspective of real conflict between Trump and Putin. I always remind you of February 2018, when there was a real conflict in Syria between American military and Wagner Group. Russian soldiers from Wagner Group closely approached ConocoPhillips oil fields in Syria, and Pentagon asked directly President Trump. That was during his first presidential term, and Trump authorized elimination of that squad, and all of them, more than 300 people, were killed by Americans, and that was basically the first real battle between Russians and Americans since, I don't know, since the beginning of the Cold War. And that time, the reaction of Putin was just the same. Putin was silent. Putin was shocked. Putin did not expect this to happen. We know that Putin is always escalating. He's strong because he's always not shy to make strong gestures to escalate any kind of situation. But that moment he was shocked. He didn't know what to do, and it seems to me that we have the same situation like that. They did not expect
this
Trump to
to happen.
start this operation, to start it this way. They did not expect it to be that swift and that effective. At the same time, yes, I can tell you how my sources in Moscow evaluate the future of Venezuela. They are not optimistic. They don't think that it's over, but we
Right.
definitely don't see any reaction from Russian propaganda, from Putin. They are puzzled.
Well, it would be hard for Vladimir Putin to criticize what the Americans did. Because it's one thing for Democrats in Congress to say what happened was illegal and a violation of the law, and Congress should have been asked, and et cetera, et cetera. But for Vladimir Putin, of all people, to start criticizing Donald Trump for going into a neighboring country um, with force and I mean, I would think that's a hard sell even for him.
You would be surprised, but
Yes.
please guess. You probably remember the person whose name is Kirill Dmitriev. He is Jared
Yes.
Kushner's counterpart,
Yes.
who is Putin's advisor on dealing with America. He's counterpart of Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner during all the negotiations, and he was the only person to tweet something. Uh, to officially comment on what is happening. If
What did he
that
say?
if that could be, and he strongly criticized. But now, please guess whom. I can give you a few examples, few variants. A, he criticized United States and Donald Trump. B, he criticized Venezuela and President Maduro. C, he criticized European Union, and D, he criticized Ukraine and Vladimir Zelensky. Please choose. Whom did
Okay.
Kirill Dmitriev blame? Who is to blame for this crisis? Who is
Right.
the
Right.
object of his criticism?
Right.
What's what would be your choice? What would be your guess?
Right. Well, if that sounds like a ramble, I need to go and look at that on X. I mean, that sounds like one big.
the correct answer is European Union.
Okay.
You would be surprised. Yes, European Union, special representative on relationships with United States, of President of Russia, criticized European Union for their double standards because he blames them for not criticizing Trump
Yes.
for this aggression. So he
Of
said, like,
course. Of
look,
course. Of
look,
course.
all of your democratic values are fake. You were criticizing Russia for attacking Ukraine, and now you're silent and you don't dare to criticize Trump. So
Right.
yes, that's the way how they see the reality. They are very cynical. They know that everyone is just pretending, and so basically that was the core of Russian propaganda from the beginning. They were saying, okay, if America invaded Iraq in 2003, that means that superpowers have that privilege. Superpowers potentially can attack other countries, can invade other countries. So if Russia is a superpower, Vladimir Putin says, that means that we should have that privilege. We should have that right to use violence. We should have that right to kill innocent people for the sake of our geopolitical interests. So, according to this logic, yes, it's like uh, it's called "I told you so." Yeah, they were saying that yes, Americans don't respect international law and they do whatever they want, and now they say, yeah, we told you so.
But so what do you think? But could this be helpful potentially for Zelensky? I mean, what are you hearing from Ukraine? What's their reaction?
I think I I can honestly tell you that I didn't have a chance to discuss this situation with Ukrainians so far, but I can imagine that they know that they have to go on. They have to continue this war as long as it's possible, as long as Russian economy can continue feeding Russian army. Uh, and it's not, it's there are some limits. Probably Vladimir Putin plans to live forever with
As we discussed.
with organ transplantation, but Russian army and Russian economy cannot endure forever, especially with not so stable oil market. Especially with the fact that the resources are not limitless. Most Russian businesses are nearly bankrupt or overloaned. So yeah, it's quite hard. So and it will be harder and harder. Everyone understands that. So for Ukraine, it's clear that they should wait for
Yeah.
not wait, fight. I mean, they
Yes.
should
Keep.
endure, fight, and resist for 2 years, maybe 3 years, maybe so more or less. So it's like, yeah, the situation is not amazing for Ukraine, but it's clear that Russian potential is not endless. And with this, we don't know. So I think that we all must have this understanding that nothing is permanent. And today is the third day of 2026. And the world is already very different from the previous year. So I think this year is going to be very turbulent, and we are in this era when we will have a lot of changes and a lot of dramatic changes. Nothing is forever. For why Vladimir Putin doesn't want any real negotiations with Ukraine and any real peace deal with Donald Trump? Because he thinks that Trump is temporary. He thinks that Trump is not going to be there in 3 years. So why making any concessions? For Putin, Trump is temporary. We see that situation in Iran is becoming more and more turbulent right now. I hope that there is. It seems like the only thing that Americans can do to support Iranian people is not to interfere, is not to try to help Iranian people, because the situation is becoming less and less stable, and the series of uprisings can be seen in different Iranian cities. So yeah, it's Iranian society is very active, and it does not remind, for example, the society of Venezuela. Any kind of revolution or popular revolt in Venezuela was impossible, but it's still possible in Iran. So yeah, we're going to see a lot of changes
Yeah.
in
Well,
in
it
this
will
year.
be very.
I
I
I
mean, I
I,
think.
I mhm.
Sorry to. No, I was just going to say. I mean, one of the big takeaways I did get from the Trump press conference this morning was the emphasis on America regaining control of the oil. And so, to your point about nothing being permanent, if the Americans quickly take over the oil coming out of Venezuela, that would be something that would, I mean, it is unquestionably leverage over Putin, because that's not something that would probably get reversed.
Yes, but the importance of Venezuela is its reserves, not what is currently available, but its reserves. Venezuela is number one in the world due to its reserves, and it's going to take time. It's going to take
Right.
time to try to extract all
Get
those
it. Yeah.
reserves from oil from, because it's really deep, and it's really hard, and it's really complicated. Only technologies are available, and it's clear that only American oil companies, like Halliburton, is capable to potentially do that. Chinese don't have those technologies. Russians don't have those technologies. So there was no option to extract Venezuelan reserves for anyone except for Americans. So now it's going to be inevitable. We still don't know what is really going to happen. Uh, Probably the operation was so we will learn it within months. We will see if um, who is going really to run Venezuela, because as for now we cannot be sure. Probably there was some kind of cooperation from Venezuelan elite with the Americans, because it was so, like, why there was no resistance, why there was no any kind of defense. Still, Venezuelan army is running the country, so probably Venezuela, part of Venezuelan military elite, betrayed President Maduro in exchange for something. So probably the regime somehow will going to be the same, but will be more cooperative with Americans. We will see that. So far, what we hear from Vice President Delcy Rodriguez, um, she's we cannot be sure if she's pretending,
Yes, I know.
if like she is speaking
It's a
out
bluff.
in favor of Maduro, and she is swearing that all of them are going to be loyal to him. It sounds a bit weird. Maybe it's just like she's trying to save the face, and the real negotiations are going to, or they are happening behind the curtains, and they are going to be more obvious. But yes, it's definitely oil industry is the key. Trump does not conceal that, but it's a very long-term game.
Long process. Right. Right. So the leverage on Putin is not happening tomorrow. No.
Um, yeah, it's I say, it's the part of the bigger game.
Yeah.
Uh, but the fact that Trump administration is thinking about the oil industry means that um, they can do more. So if they are trying to fix oil market and oil prices with Venezuela, it means that probably it's not that hard to start dealing with Russian shadow fleet. And okay, there are a lot of Russian, like not Russian, but shadow vessels all around the world transporting Russian oil. Okay, 400 approximately. Is it possible to do something with all those ships? Yeah, it's possible. So, and if it's important for them, they are able to deal with this. So it's going to take a year or 2 years. But if it's the question of their seriousness. Uh, definitely they can pretend that the negotiations are going on, and definitely Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff are going to talk with Kirill Dmitriev for a year, for 2 years. I don't know, but at the same time, we might see that uh, different people from the Treasury or State Department are going to come up with new little sanctions, step by step, against Russian shadow fleet. So this what is happening with oil in Venezuela gives me some level of certainty that something is going to be done to confront Russia's potential to sell oil.
Well, that is, I mean, that's good.
It's
I think.
I must be clear. It's like I don't really think that it's good. Anything is like I'm not sure that military operation against Maduro is the terrible person. And it would be for still for many my compatriots, today is a very difficult day because it's clear that most of us, including me, we were protesting against Putin's invasion of Ukraine,
Yeah.
and I left the country as well as more than 1 million people. So that was clearly black and white situation. Russia was the aggressor
Right.
and Ukraine was victim. What happened today is not the same situation. It's not that black and white. Maduro is a terrible person. Venezuela is dictatorship. More than 9 million Venezuelans fled the country during the last decade, and a lot of Venezuelan refugees are celebrating today. And I know personally, I've spoken to few friends from Venezuela, and they are happy.
Yeah.
I can understand their psychology, and still, we cannot be really happy, fully happy, because something is terribly wrong with that.
Yes. Yes. Agreed. Agreed. I think it's a very complicated response to what happened. It's very mixed. Confused is what I
Hmm.
felt. On the one
Hmm.
hand, great, Maduro's a bad guy. But then there's the but. But, do we really have the right to just charge in and, take over somebody else's country? I mean, it seems you start doing that, then where is the line? Where does it stop? It's I think it's very difficult.
It reminds me a lot on of the situation I described in my last book, The Dark Side of the Earth. My book about the collapse of Soviet Union and the last 30 years of the Cold War, and basically that was the last conflict of the Cold War, and it happened this day. There are a lot of comparisons with that operation. January 3rd, 1990, Bush Senior administration and operation against Panama, and Manuel Noriega, who was accused of narco trafficking, and so it's so obviously close. And I recently spoke to a colleague from Panama, who was reflecting on that period of history, saying that was terrible, but that was actually the best thing that happened in history of Panama, and everything what happened after that, it's only because of that American invasion. Yeah, probably American invasion was illegal, but the consequences were positive.
Yes.
So, so
Yes.
we really don't know. We really don't know how to evaluate what is happening right
Yeah.
now, and we will need to really find out the context. We don't have enough context.
I agree. I agree. Well, Mikhail, thank you for giving us the time on a
Thank
Saturday.
you.
It was important. We've been talking about this possibility for months. So it was important to check in.
And it's
Um,
important. It's important just to for both of us to realize
yeah,
that we are not our discussions are not in vain.
no,
We make some predictions, and somehow it happens. Yeah,
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Well, let's stay in touch because I'm sure the Russians, Putin will come up with something eventually, and it'll be interesting to see what he says publicly when he does.
that's true.
Um,
Let's wait and see.
so yeah, and let's see what Zelensky does too. I think it'll be very, very interesting. All right,
Thank you so
thank
much.
you. We will be reconvening, and thank you everyone for tuning in.
Yeah. Bye bye.